Secure Synopsis General Studies 2 of 9th June 2021. Topic issues relating to poverty and hunger. Mainstreaming nutrition and different approaches to agriculture, especially into agricultural extension, could help in reducing overall unacceptability in high economic and social cost, thus aiding to elevate issues of hunger. So, this question mainly deals with nutrition, agriculture, and the issue of hunger. Let us analyze it. Food and nutrition security exists when all people are able to consume food in both sufficient quantity and quality to meet their dietary needs and food preferences. And they are supported by an environment with adequate sanitation, health services, and care, allowing for a healthy and active life. Let's have a look at the background. Global Nutrition Report 2020. As per this report, India is among 88 countries that are likely to miss global nutrition targets by 2025. Malnutrition in India accounts for about 68% of total under 5 deaths and 17% of total disability adjusted life years. India is home to about 30% of world's stunted children and nearly 50% of severely wasted children under the age of 5. FAO estimates, that is the Food and Agricultural Organization estimates that 194.4 million people in India, about 14.5% of the total population, are undernourished. Global Hunger Index 2019, India ranks 102nd out of 117 countries in the Global Hunger Index 2019. India's wasting rate is extremely high at 20.8%, the highest wasting rate of any country. Agriculture impacts human health and nutrition in many ways, both positively and potentially negative. Agriculture creates the source of food which provides essential nutrients, dietary diversity, as well as food security. Nutrition sensitive agriculture has emerged as a way to define agricultural investments with the purpose of improving nutrition by working with the global food system better equipped to produce food good nutritional outcomes. Mainstreaming nutrition and different approaches to agriculture. How do we implement the nutritional aspect in agriculture? So these are 4 points that you can write. Biofortification, which enriches staple crops with micronutrients such as iron, vitamin A, and zinc using plant breed techniques. Nutrient rich crop varieties can also be produced through genetic modification, but until concerns about GMOs are adequately addressed, biofortified crops bred by traditional methods or by molecular marker assisted selection have easier market uptake. Policy incentive making agriculture work for nutrition requires creating policy incentives for farmers and other stakeholders in the rural sector. To be sustainable, interventions must be compatible with economic incentives. For example, government grain subsidies, which allow consumers to purchase nutritious cereals such as millet and fortified maize at below market rates, may encourage increased cultivation of these crops over more conventional but less nutritional wheat and rice varieties, if price supports are also present. Mixed farming, used to promote integrated crop livestock fish production systems and increase availability of fruits. For example, you can mix fish and duck, fish and chicken, fish and pig farming, and rice and fish farming. Crop rotation. So when you rotate the crop on a seasonal basis, it improves the nutritional quality of available foods. Example, cereal legume rotation provides both proteins to human beings and nitrogen to the soil. How do we conclude this? Nutrition must be incorporated into all aspects of the value chain, starting with nutrient rich soils that will improve the quality of the crops and extending across the food system to other elements like food safety, food processing, food fortification, and proper food preparation and consumption in households. Food processing is essential for making nutritionally rich foods such as fruits, vegetables, and dairy products available year round. It can also reduce food preparation time and thus, like other labor saving technologies, enable women to spend more time caring for their children, namely to breastfeed. Nutrition education initiatives that explain which food combination will provide essential vitamins and minerals can have a big impact as well. Topic effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest, Indian diaspora. Account for the growing convergence of India's interest with the West in changing geopolitical scenario and opportunities it offers to India. The summit of the Group of Seven industrial countries, hosted by the United Kingdom in the picturesque Cornwall region, promises to be a definite moment in the political evolution of the West. Group of Seven are those countries which are extremely rich in the country. They account for about 40% of the global GDP. So, this summit, which will see the digital participation of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, also marks an important step towards a new global compact between India and the West. India's growing convergence with the West. For India, the Cornwall Summit comes amidst intensifying strategic cooperation with the West. This includes strong bilateral strategic cooperation with the US, France, UK, as well as the Quad and trilateral partnerships with France and Australia, as well as Japan and Australia. India has also stepped up its engagement with European Union. There is no doubt that the increasing intensity of this engagement with the US and West has been triggered in part by the continuous deterioration of the relationship with China. The frequent military crisis at the northern frontiers in 2013, 2014, 2017, and 2020 have compelled Delhi to reevaluate its threat perception. Besides the threat to territorial security, India finds that its hopes for strong global cooperation with China through such forums as the RIC, Russia, India, China Forum, BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, have taken a big beating in recent years. China is the only great power that does not support India's permanent membership with the UN Security Council and blocks India's membership of the Nuclear Supplies Group. At the end of the Cold War, Delhi believed that Beijing was a natural partner in the construction of a multipolar world to limit the dangers of a unipolar world dominated by the US. Delhi now can't escape the conclusion that China is the greatest obstacle to India's global aspirations and West is an emerging partner. If in the past Delhi resented the Western tilt towards Pakistan on the Kashmir question, it is China today that rakes up the Kashmir question in the UNSC. India has relied on Western support to fend off China's effort to internationalize the Kashmir question after the 2019 constitutional changes. The West is also more empathetic than China on India's international campaign to contain Pakistan's support for cross border terrorism. India is not only reluctant to integrate with the China led Asian economic order, but it is also turning to the West, the US, UK, EU, and others for trade agreements. India is also eager to emerge as a critical node in future supply chains or reoriented to the democratic world, including in the area of vaccine production. Looking east and mobilizing the south have been India's default political orientations all these decades. While Delhi continues to strengthen its partnership in Asia and global south, a more productive partnership with the West helps secure a growing array of India's national interests and adds a new depth to India's international dimensions on relations. Government policies and intervention for development in various sectors and issues arising out of their design and implementation. Government schemes and policies have the needed components to address the mental health issues, but more needs to be done in the context of pandemic. Explain. Mental illness is a general term for a group of illnesses that may impact on a person's thoughts, perceptions, feelings, and behaviors. Surveys have indicated that the pandemic is increasing mental health problems. Practo, an integrated healthcare company, reported a 665% jump in the number of mental health solution consultations. More than two-thirds of the queries were from those aged 21 to 40. Anxiety, stress, and panic attacks were the most commonly discussed topics. A report published in the Lancet Psychiatry in Feb 2020 indicates that in 2017 there were 197.3 million people with mental disorders in India. The top mental illnesses were depressive disorders and for about 45 million and anxiety disorders. The contribution of mental disorders to the total DALIs in India increased from 2.5% in 1990 to 4.7% in 2017. Budgetary spending, the year 2020 began with a reduction of budget allocation for mental health in India. India's healthcare budget in 2018 was 52,800 crore, of which rupees 50 crore was for mental health, and that was reduced to rupees 40 crore the following year. India is barely spending 0.5% of the health budget on this sector. Government initiatives, the Mental Health Care Act 2017 came into force in 2018 to meet the requirements of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which India ratified in 2007. Kiran, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment has launched a 24/7 toll-free helpline to provide support to people facing anxiety, stress, depression, suicidal thoughts, and other mental health concerns. Mano Darpan Initiative, it is an initiative of the Ministry of Education under Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. It is aimed at to provide psychological support, psychosocial support to students, family members, and teachers for their mental health and well-being during the times of COVID-19. What's the way forward? Increasing the number of psychologists and psychiatrists alone won't help. Stigma and awareness are two separate issues, although interlinked. They need to be addressed in parallel in order to tackle the burden of mental illness. Community partnership, by forming self-help groups of carers, families, along with the NGOs, which brings community participation and helps reduce the social stigma associated with mental illness. increase in resources, increasing mental health healthcare facilities and related infrastructure through more resource allocation in the budget, adequate mental healthcare professional availability, empathetic service delivery. Delivery of services should be sensitive, compassionate, and free from stigma and discrimination in public healthcare institutions. What are the issues relating to development and management of social sector services relating to health, education, human resources? Performance grading index can give a makeover to the performance of schools as recognized by Right to Education Act 2009 in the country. Do you agree? Comment. The PGI is a tool to provide insights on the status of school education in states and union territories, including key levers that drive their performance and critical areas for improvement. The Education Ministry released the latest edition of Performance Grading Index or PGI. This relatively new index measures the performance of states in school education. Performance Grading Index, it assesses states' performance in school education based on data drawn from several sources, including Unified District Information System for Education Plus, National Achievement Survey, and midday meals. States are scored on a total of 1,000 points across 70 parameters, which are grouped under five broad categories: access, example, enrollment ratio, transition rate and retention rate, governance and management, infrastructure, equity, difference in performance between scheduled caste students and general category students, and learning outcomes, average score in mathematics, science, languages, and social science. States are graded and not ranked to discourage the practice of one improving only at the cost of others, thereby casting a stigma of underperformance on the latter. According to the government, the objective is to help the states prioritize areas for intervention in school education. The Education Ministry released the first PGI in 2019 for the reference year 2017-2018. Importance of PGI in improving school performance. The PGI exercises envisages that the index would propel states and UTs towards undertaking multi-pronged interventions that will bring about the much desired optimal education outcomes. The PGI helps the states or union territories to pinpoint the gaps and accordingly prioritize areas for intervention to ensure that the school education system is robust at every level. According to the report, states and union territories mainly need to improve their performance in terms of governance processes. This domain carries several parameters, including teacher availability, teacher training, regular inspection, and availability of finances. The area that requires attention is the domain for infrastructure and facilities, where 20 states UTs have scored less than 180, 80% of maximum possible score in this domain. Two states, Bihar and Meghalaya, recorded lowest scores in this domain. This is a cause for concern, as a proper school building with adequate facilities is a must to improve the overall quality of school education. Schools have performed poorly in governance processes area as well. Compliance with the indicators here will lead to critical structural reforms in areas ranging from monitoring the attendance of teachers to ensuring a transparent recruitment of teachers and principals. The center, with its transparent scores and data for each parameter and subtopic made available in the public domain, seeks to create a resource sharing system that allows that is low performing states can tap into. Conclusion: clearly, the start of COVID 19 will persist over the education system for the foreseeable future, and further progress on all parameters will depend on bridging gaps, particularly on digital tools, infrastructure, and subsidies for access. The PGI scores show that the southern and western states are on firm ground to achieve this, while those in central India and parts of east and northeast are also less resourced. Important aspects of governance, transparency, and accountability, e governance applications, models, successes, limitations, and potential, citizens' charters, transparency and accountability, and institutional and other measures. Do you think the digital service delivery platforms in India have reversed the trust deficit and increased the citizen participation in the country? Discuss this with suitable examinations or justifications. Historically, Indians have had low social trust and have looked at authorities to enforce compliance. But over the last decade, India has witnessed a big and welcome change in social trust. Indians are increasingly comfortable sending money to a phone number from their phones, such as UPI, Paytm, and getting into taxis driven by strangers, Ola, Uber. Digital as a way of life in India, digital platforms providing goods and services, including online education and telemedicine, have grown vigorously over past few years to increase in smartphone and internet access with an estimated 750 million connections and a thriving financial technology sector. India at cusp of digital revolution. A beginning has been made through government to citizen services using common service center, advice to agriculturalists, digital payments of welfare benefits through bank accounts, and even legal advice online to 4 lakh people under the Tele Law scheme. Digital India Mission, launched 5 years ago, was not being seen as any regular government initiative and had now become a way of life. especially for the poor and marginalized and those in the government. Result of internet access, affordable smartphones and internet access have made India a digital nation with an estimated 750 million connections and a thriving financial technology sector. India is uniquely positioned to leap ahead in the information era as the country has the best minds as well as the biggest market. Also, India's local tech solutions have the potential to grow global. Digital platforms in COVID-19, digital platforms providing goods and services including online education and telemedicine have grown vigorously during the COVID-19 pandemic, while many professionals have maintained productivity by working from home. Ayushman Bharat, which is the world's largest healthcare scheme, has been able to see progress and success due to vital role played by technology. Swamitva scheme is ambitious scheme to give land titles to millions of people in rural areas and would be achieved through technology like drones. Need for innovative cyber security solutions with rapid increase of tech use, data protection as well as cyber security became very important. Indian youth needs to devise innovative solutions could effectively vaccinate digital products against cyber attacks and viruses. Difference between the industrial age and the information age. PM Modi said that in the information era, the first mover did not matter. The best mover did, and anyone can make a product anytime, and that disturbs all existing equations of the market. Global market in the industrial era, boundaries mattered, but the information era was all about going beyond boundaries. Climate change technology held the key to new science reduction of carbon emission and tackling of global climate change. Challenges ahead, trustworthiness. The true measure of digital nations is the readiness of governments to use technology to create open, participatory public systems that citizens consider trustworthy. Governance must achieve a reliable system of digital welfare. Need to apply to other sectors. If digital methods can be applied to other sectors such as road safety, the results could be dramatic, potentially reducing the accident mortality rate of about 150 lakh thousand deaths a year. Internal changes required at a broader level. The effective digital government depends on transforming internal processes and fixing deadlines for service delivery. Lacks legislative framework, the UPA government could not see its electronic delivery of services legislation through and it remains forgotten. Conclusion: if digital has to become a way of life, redefining the labyrinth functioning of citizen centric services would be a good place to start with deadlines for government departments. Governance must achieve a reliable system of digital welfare. Next is about the welfare schemes between center and states. Sex workers in India continue to face difficulties due to the COVID 19 pandemic. They have lost their livelihoods, have limited access to healthcare, and face increased violence. In this context, discuss the need to grant basic labor rights to sex workers in the country. Around the world, sex workers are being forgotten in the government responses to the COVID 19 crisis. As sex workers and their clients self isolate, sex workers are finding themselves unprotected, increasingly vulnerable, and unable to provide for themselves and their families. As the global crisis deepens, sex workers are increasingly faced with the difficult choice of isolation with no income or support or working at a risk to their own health and safety. Lack of availability of community support, access to health and social services, broader aspects of legal and economic environment, stigma and criminalization, making them non eligible for government led social protection or economic initiatives to support small businesses. Increased prevalence of underlying health conditions among sex workers might increase the risk of COVID 19 progressing to a severe illness. Demand for shelter and supported housing has increased as sex worker venues have been shut down or rental payments default through loss of income. Existing mental health problems are likely to be exacerbated by anxiety over income, food, and housing, alongside concerns about infection from continuing to work in the absence of social protection. Risk of infection with SARS-CoV-2 is heightened by for those who share drug paraphernalia for drug use. They now ask being risk being homeless as they are unable to pay rent because of no income. The core clientele of sex workers has traditionally been migrant workers and men away from their families. Sex workers now face months without business. Considering migrant workers are also struggling to cope with little to no income and long term economic downturn, while the homeless and beggars are being put in shelters, people rarely acknowledge the existence and plight of sex workers. The right to food as a fundamental right is statutorily imbibed in the National Food Security Act 2013, however, are not included as beneficiaries to this statutory relief either. Need for basic labor rights, improvement in the condition of sex workers, we can clearly see that the countries which have legalized it has only helped in the improvement of the condition. A study conducted in countries where prostitution is legalized has shown positive results, which show that violence and spread of disease has reduced to a great level. Reduction in trafficking, that is one of the most important part. Empowerment of the workers, the sex workers. Legalizing prostitution will empower sex workers. They will get the courage to approach the police when their rights will be violated. Improvement in the health, legislation has to be brought in place so that we can actually improve their health. Taxes instead of bribes, prostitution will be considered a work after its legalization, hence it can be taxed. Reduction in involvement of minors in that, and also a reduction in rape cases. In Rhodes Island, the rape case is reduced to the extent of 39 after the legalization of prostitution. Conclusion: there exists no requirement for any specific cure, such as criminalizing, decriminalizing, or sanctioning it. From the past research, it is difficult to refute the fact that legalization of prostitution bears both negative as well as positive effects. Therefore, just providing legal validity to prostitution will not be sufficient to resolve this problem. Rather than this, for uniform law must be made for its administration in our country, as regulation of this will help to safeguard the workers and their children from getting exploited. Let's move on to the next one. General Studies 4 case study. Instead of passing the law banning prenatal sex determination tests, government should have concentrated on changing the underlying social attitudes. Do you agree? Give reasons. So this is between the law and social attitudes. In India, the female to male ratio is 1.08 males for every female. This is a result of limitation Indian society places on the birth of girls. In India, female feticide is the earliest stage possible in the discrimination of women and girls. Social discrimination against women and a preference for sons have promoted female feticide in various forms, skewing the sex ratio of the country towards men. Main provisions of the PCPNDT Act are: the Act provides for the prohibition of sex selection before or after conception. It regulates the use of prenatal diagnostic techniques like ultrasound and amniocentesis by allowing them their use only to detect genetic abnormalities, metabolic disorders, chromosomal abnormalities, certain congenital malformations, hemoglobin neuropathies, sex linked disorders. No laboratory or center or clinic will conduct any test, including ultrasonography, for the purpose of determining the sex of the fetus. No person, including the one who is conducting the procedure as per the law, will communicate the sex of the fetus to the pregnant woman or her relatives, signs, or any other method. Compulsory registration. The Act mandates compulsory registration of all diagnostic laboratories, all genetic counseling centers, genetic laboratories, genetic clinics, and ultrasonics clinics. Despite this enactment, according to 2011 census, overall female to male ratio has improved marginally as compared to the 2001 census. As per 2011 census, the sex ratio 0 to 6 years has actually witnessed a decline from 927 males to about 100 to 919 in 2011. Evidently, just the formulation of this policy has failed to achieve its goals. Behavioral change for better results, addressing the social attitude of son meta preference, increasing female education and economic prosperity to help them improve the ratio. In this pursuit, the government's Beti Bachao Beti Padhao campaign has achieved remarkable success in bringing behavioral change in the society. There is an urgent need to reach young people for reproductive health education and services, as well as to cultivate gender equity norms. Addressing the regressive mindset, there is a considerable son meta preference in all states, except possibly in Kerala and Chhattisgarh. The son's preference is derived from an regressive mindset. People associate girls with dowry. Spreading awareness about women's rights, roll out campaigns on sensitization towards women and children, making women safety cells, ensuring the safety of women on public transport system, making cybercrime cells, or more other initiatives that need to be taken. Despite several policies and programs, lower health outcomes for women and girl children still persist in India, and the son preference has to be stopped. And finally, only an overarching gender sensitization program needs to put in place at institutional level, at public and private level, and also at societal level, and suffering of the female population and to the inventory of the missing millions.